Hello and welcome. I'm Bill Wake. We're here working on a Tune Similarity program. Yesterday's broadcast messed up for some reason, so I thought I'd just make a quick video walking us through the changes from yesterday, so when we do today's session, we'll be all caught up. All right, so we're back here and starting yesterday. Okay, so the first thing we're doing is we have the notion of a rest, and we're trying to capture the fact that rests have duration as well. So the old way we parse Z or X are the symbols ABC parser uses for rests, and we were capturing Z or X followed by an optional duration, so we would accept it, but then down here we just ignored it and said don't return anything for rests. The parsers code we've been doing to catch the shape of the melody doesn't pay attention to rests, so we just left them out. Now we're going to say there's a Z or X still, but notice we drop that less than sign that says keep track of the stuff on the left, and we're only going to keep track of the duration. And so this becomes an optional duration, so we'll get an optional value here. If it exists, we'll use it. If it doesn't exist, we'll just default it to an eighth note and then return an explicit rest that represents it. Now this eighth note rhythm is not the long-term thing, but it'll get us going. Tune, this was just a rename score instead of notes, nothing there. And then we added a little bit of checking. So we've separated out rest parsing and set an expected value of a rhythm of 1/8. So we're just checking those rhythms. And same thing down here. I split up the parsing to make sure that we capture exactly the rhythm. So the slash says divide the rhythm in half, so an eighth note becomes a 16th note. 3 slashes divided by 8, and /2 you can explicitly say what you're dividing by. Even weird numbers, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even allow the 24, but it makes a 1/92. Okay, I don't know. We'll decide later. All right, and then check rest parsing just parses out a tune and make sure that the rest is there with the expected rhythm. Go back here. Okay, now that eighth note rhythm we did, that's not really the right value. The right value has to come from a TuneState, which is here, the note length. At some point in the header, you can set a note length. The default is 1/8 note, but you might decide that a quarter note or a half note or something would be a better base for the rhythm. And this is, so when you have a note like A, it gives it a default length. Okay, so you don't have to specify every time A is an eighth note, B is an eighth note, and so on. All right, and then down here, we're going to modify the note line parser to say, hey, if you're, instead of putting that default eighth note in there, you should really use the one that's from the TuneState. Okay, and here you can see we captured the TuneState, and down here was rhythm 1/8. Now we look it up on the note length of the TuneState. And parser. Dead code from when we moved out the rhythm stuff. I try and do single check-ins on things, but I obviously don't manage every time. Okay, so we're going to, it's just that there's sort of a dance when you're initializing. Which things can you initialize directly and which things have to be done after the rest of the initializer. And we had duration. Let's see if I can get in one view here. Not quite. Okay. Well, down here, we had been doing duration in the defer section, and I realized, like, oh, you don't really have to defer it. It doesn't call any methods or anything. It's just assigning it. So we move this up, and once we do that, we don't have to put the exclamation point, which says It might conceivably not be initialized. I promise it will be. Instead, we just say no, it's definitely initialized. Okay. Compared to parser, has this because we're calling a method. We can't defer. We can't do it in the main body of the initializer. We have to do it in the defer. And since the initializer requires everything to be initialized, unless it has an exclamation point, we add the exclamation point. But when we finish the the whole initializer, the defer runs last, calls that method, and that sets us up so that the parser is defined by the time anybody else does anything. Okay, move note to helper class. Yeah, so this notes, it turns out that nobody calls it on AbcParser. It's really only used by tests. So we're going to take this code and put it in over here as a test time extension. So this now only lives in the test side of the package. It still puts the same method on AbcParser, but we can call it from test, but we can't call it from main code. And it really is not something we'd want to call in our main code. And let's see this. Okay, this is just a rename make note line parser goes to make. All right, now here, I realized there's no reason these have to be public or semi-public. Let's just make them internal and be done with it. That's a nice small check-in. All right. So duration parser, let's see. Okay, and instead of having ABC make it, we let it build itself and then pull it out from there. I don't know that that's ideal quite, but I think it's an improvement. Okay, let's see, and then duration. That is constructing itself now. So when you create a duration parser, it builds the internal pcombo is the package we're using. It builds a parser on those lines, and so it's a one-time build here. And we renamed or adjusted make. Bind character is the same as cbind, so that's just a tiny refactoring there. And in here, yeah, we saw that. Okay. We're going to do the same thing on note parser. It didn't hold a parser before. We called make to get it every time. Now we're going to have this class make the parser and do that once and hold on to it. And AbcParser adjusts to that. So it just fetches the parser that it's already made. The work goes so much faster when I'm just looking at it instead of doing it, doesn't it? Okay. Similar idea here for key parser. It didn't have a parser before. We add the parser in, have it make it once. There's a method down here. Yeah, make. And then we can use that in the parser. It's all set. Okay. Note parser. Okay. That's a inlining of the thing we did last time, but key parser here, we just fetch the parser from the key parser instead of building it ourselves. Okay, so pushing a little more work over to the object. All right, and then the tests, again, they just had to, instead of building the parser themselves, they need to go get the one that's already built. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for header title parser. Really just a rename. It already has the parser. All right. Now we're switching gears. There's this notion of a length, and let's see if I can. I don't know why that's in there with no changes. Oh, that's the new file. Okay, sorry. There's the notion of a length that you specify in the tune header, and that gives you this default note length. And so I'm trying to say, oh, you should really have a setter as well as a getter. Okay, you don't just get the length, but you can put lines in the header that change it. Okay, so we are going to add something that actually parses that. I guess if it's an added file, the one on the left is kind of the same as the one on the right. Okay. But anyway, the header length, it's the phrase L colon and then a 1, and actually can have more than that in the long run, but it's going, that's the line that specifies a length. Really, it's going to be L colon 1. It could be 1 meaning a whole note, or 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, all the regular notes. All right, and what we do once we get it, we're going to take the string. So this one ends up being the contents of it. We're going to take that string and make the int from it and use that in the rhythm. A whole note is 1. It's a little overkill, really. But anyway, a 1 comma 1 is a whole note, and that's the only thing we can specify right now. Okay, and there's a parse method. Notice that it takes the TuneState in and out, and it runs that parser above and sets the the note length on it. Okay. Now AbcParser added the get set. I guess that's all we did there. Then we added tests for this thing. So all we can do so far is the whole note length. So we're going to put this phrase in L colon 1, pass in the tune state, and make sure that the new state, the result of this parse is the state machine state that controls our parser. Okay, we're just saying, yeah, I should be in the tune header at this point. You were looking for titles. Now you found something that's not a title, so you're in the tune header. And we check that the rhythm is the whole note rhythm. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to support the rest of that. So this is a rename error. Let's look at the header parser. Okay, so now we are adding this whole check rhythm function. Let's go down where it's used. It's L1, L colon 1, and then the interesting part is slash and more and digits. Okay, so you don't have to do that, but if you do, it's there. All right, and we don't need the 1 anymore, so we're just ignoring the left side and keeping the right side. We know if there's no slash digit, it must have just been a 1. Otherwise, we have the slash digit, and we can check the rhythm. Let's check down here. Okay, and the rhythm, check rhythm. We've basically pulled up this code into check rhythm and extended it. So we've got the characters coming in. We also have the rest of the input, so we can report error messages if there are any. All right, so the denominator starts out 1 default, and if there's characters after the slash, then we turn those into an int. Then we check and make sure the only legal values are these powers of 2. There aren't 1/3 notes, at least in standard music notation. You certainly could build a system that way. I'm sure somebody has, but we're just dealing with standard notation and fiddle tunes and stuff like that. So it's not experimental 20th century music. Even 100 years later, they're still pretty experimental. Anyway, it's got to be one of these powers of 2. We make sure it is. If it's not, we tell you that, and then assuming that if it's a failure, we fail. If it's successful, we create a rhythm with 1 in the denominator. So 1/2, 1/4, and so on. And the parser, I think we looked at that. Yeah, just a little bit of rework on the errors, lowercase. I don't know why I made them upper in the first place. All right, update to do. I think we can skip that. All right, and then the final thing we did, up till now, we've had this protocol TuneState, and the only implementer is AbcParser. So in effect, we've subclassed TuneState, or well, no, we've promised to implement the protocol, and we provided current key and note length in there. Instead of being a TuneState or supporting a TuneState, I wanted to make us just hold a TuneState instead. So it's no longer implementing that protocol, and it just holds an instance of TuneState, and TuneState's been modified to be a concrete actual declaration of something, So it has its default moved up here, key of C, eighth note rhythm, and a public initializer, so you can create them, but it's really owned by AbcParser now, not is one. And so instead of passing self in, because self was conforming to TuneState, now we just pass in the actual TuneState. So I don't know if you're quite going from inheritance to delegation, but it's kind of in that ballpark. Now down here, where people were setting the current key on the parser, now that's part of TuneState, so we do it in there. And same thing down here, current key. Okay. The tests, they had the same problem. They were getting their TuneState from AbcParser. Well, now they can just create one and reference that. I don't think there's anything else going on there. No. All right. So that catches us up where we are for the start of today, and I'm not quite sure what we're doing. Let's go back. I guess we're on the latest now. Okay, that's good. So let's look at to do. Lengthen tune headers. So we've done all the work to parse that thing, but we haven't tied it into our main parser, and that's where we'll pick up today to make sure that you can have those in the header of a tune, and that they're honored in the body when it's parsing the actual notes and rhythms. All right. Sorry about the mess up on the video yesterday, but this should catch you up, and I will see you later today. It's 1 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or 6 to 8:30 p.m. UTC, and pick up from there. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.